I'd like to welcome everyone, whoever you may be out there, to the 16th episode of the Krishna Lite Show, coming to you from Spanish Fork, Utah, on a quiet Sunday, 1 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. We're going through the book, Great Transcendental Adventures by Cormados, which talks about the founding of Krishna consciousness in Australia. My wife and I happened to be in Australia when we met devotees and became active, and we stayed there for 5 years. And this book is a chronicle of all the adventures that we and the founding fathers had there in the continent down under. So we read excerpts from that, and we pepper the program with rap songs. Do the Festival of Colors normally when we're not in a pandemic lockdown mode, and it's a young audience that attends the Festival of Colors, and so it's a way to reach them through spiritualizing some of the lyrics and songs that we have, philosophy, making into rap songs, which is appreciated by a young crowd. So it gives me a chance to practice some of my rap songs during a time when we don't have the opportunity to go live. But when we do go live, perhaps sometime next year in 2021, I will be able to hit the ground running. I'll not have gotten rusty, so to speak. So in that mood, we're going to play a couple of songs here about how everything's temporary, whatever's facing you, no matter how big or impressive or overwhelming it might seem. You're an eternal spirit soul, according to the teachings of Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. You have no beginning, you have no end. The body has a beginning, the body has an end, but you're not the body. You're the eternal soul that entered into the body at the time of insemination and will exit the body at the time of death. And so, however big the problem seems, it's really not that big a deal. Either you will get, if you're living a God-centered life, whereby God is directing your steps, you're going to get the inspiration, the insight to solve the problem, get out on the other side of it. Or worst case scenario, you're just going to outlast the problem, because you're going to outlast everything material. Everything in the material world goes through 6 phases: birth, growth, duration, reproduction, dwindling, and vanishing, from the universe down to the tiny little microorganism. So that means that whatever the problem is, it's in one of those phases. It's either in the growth phase, the birth phase, the reproduction phase, the dwindling phase, or the vanishing phase. And you will survive the 6 phases of material change, because you don't change. You're eternal. So these are a couple songs, musings, you might say, about the eternality of the soul. Start a musical soundtrack here, and I'm hoping the track is just at the right level. Here it goes. Once in India reigned a king, who upon his signet ring engraved a maxim true and wise, which if held before the eyes, gave him counsel at a glance, fit for any change and chance. Solemn words, and these were they: even this will pass away. Trains of camels through the sands brought him gems from Samarkand. Fleets of galleys through the seas brought him pearls to match with these. But the king counted not his gain, treasures of the mine are made. What is wealth, the king would say? Even this will pass away. Even this will pass away. In the revels of the court, at the zenith of the sport, when the palms of all his guests burned with clapping at his chest, said the king amid his figs and wine, O loving friends of mine, pleasure comes but not to stay. Even this will pass away. Even this will pass away. Fairest lady ever seen, he made his bride and crowned his queen. Pillowed on the marriage bed, whispering to his soul, he said, bridegroom never pressed fairer bosom to his breast, but mortal flesh will come to clay. Even this will pass away. Even this will pass away. Fighting on a furious field, once a javelin pierced his shield. Soldiers with a loud lament bore him bleeding to his tent. Groaning from his tortured side, pain is hard to bear, he cried, but with patience day by day, you got it. Even this will pass away. Even this will pass away. Even this will pass away. Towering in the public square, 20 cubits in the air, stood his statue carved in stone. Then the king, disguised on loan, stood before his sculptured name, musing meekly, what is fame? Fame is but a slow decay. Even this will pass away. Even this will pass away. Even this will pass away. Struck with palsy, wise and old, waiting at the gates of gold, said the king with his dying breath, life is done, but what is death? Then in answer to the king fell a sunbeam on his ring, showing by a heavenly ray, even this will pass away. Even this will pass away. Even this will pass away. Here's a second song in our medley of two about temporality. I met a traveler from an antique land who said to vast and trunkless legs of stone stand half sunk in the desert. Beside them a shattered visage lies, whose sneer and wrinkled lip and frown of cold command tell that well the sculpture those passions red which yet survive, stamped on those lifeless things, the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. And on the pedestal these words appear, my name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. The lone and level sands stretch far away. And on the pedestal these words appear, my name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. The lone and level sands stretch far away. Even this will pass away. Once more, with the first song real quickly, double speed. Once in India reigned a king who upon his signet ring engraved a maxim true and wise, which if held before the eyes gave him counsel at a glance fit for any change and chance. Solemn words, and these were there. Even this will pass away. Trains of camels through the sands brought him gems from Samarkand, fleets of galleys through the seas brought him pearls to match with these. But he counted not his gain, treasures of the mine remain. What is wealth, the king would say, even this will pass away. In the revels of the court, at the zenith of the sport, when the palms of all his guests burned with clapping at his jests, said the king amid his figs and wine, O loving friends of mine, pleasure comes but not to stay. Even this will pass away. Even this will pass away. Fairest lady ever seen, he made his bride and crowned his queen. Pillowed on the marriage bed, whispering to his soul, he said, bridegroom never pressed fair bosom to his breast, but mortal flesh will come to clay. Even this will pass away. Even this will pass away. Even this will pass away. Fighting on a furious field, once a javelin pierced his shield. Soldiers with a loud lament bore him bleeding to his tent, and groaning from his tortured side. Pain is hard to bear, he cried, but with patience, day by day, even this will pass away. Even this will pass away. Even this will pass away. Towering in the public square, 20 cubits in the air, stood his statue carved in stone. Then the king, disguised unknown, stood before his sculptured name, musing meekly, what is fame? Fame is but a slow decay. Even this will pass away. Even this will pass away. Struck with palsy, wise and old, waiting at the gates of gold, said the king with his dying breath, life is done, but what is death? Then in answer to the king fell a sunbeam on his ring, showing by a heavenly ray, even this will pass away. Even this will pass away. Even this will pass away. And on a pedestal these words appear, my name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains round the decay of that colossal wreck. Boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. The lone and level sands stretch far away. The lone and level sands stretch far away. Talking about the passage of time, how it moves so quickly. We're going to go back, let's see, almost 50 years to 1973 in Australia, where my wife and I became devotees originally. We're a couple hundred pages into this book. After all, this is episode number 16. And we're between Prabhupada's second, I believe, and third visit to Australia, when the devotees were being harassed by the Sydney and Melbourne city councils, who were trying to ban us from chanting and distributing literature on the street. So here's Vi to read you an excerpt from that long ago adventurous time.
Good afternoon. So this is between 1972 and 1973. It starts October 1972. This is Srila Prabhupada in Vrindav in India. Although Prabhupada was separated from his beleaguered disciples in Australia by a vast distance, still, his thoughts were on their many problems. Srila Prabhupada had been lecturing morning and evening on the nectar of devotion at the Samadhi tomb of Rupa Goswami, located in the open courtyard of the Radha Damodar temple. That morning, Srila Prabhupada was speaking of Jagai and Madai, two arch opponents of Harinam Sankirtan. So that goes back to the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu 500 years earlier. Chaitanya was expanding the chanting of Hare Krishna all over India. And in Bengal, the government authorities, whose names were Jagai and Madai, they were very opposed to the chanting. They themselves were debauchees, didn't enjoy spiritual life, and they did what they could to stop the chanting, breaking mridrangas, etc. And Lord Chaitanya arranged to have just simply a protest march. The original concept of protest, peaceful protest marches, by just simply bringing in tens of thousands of people to chant. And they marched towards the home of the governor. This time was very precarious. Jagai and Madai eventually attacked Lord Chaitanya's closest associate, and that way they eventually themselves became devotees. So the idea at that time was chant no matter what, and Krishna will protect you. So Prabhupada took that same approach in Melbourne, Australia. So Prabhupada says, so they will arrest you. You've got good experience. In London, they were arresting. Srila Prabhupada turned to Guru Das. You were in London. How many times were you arrested? 3 times. Our record is that our police were arresting 36 times. I think Cormados got arrested like 300 and something times. Now the police have become disgusted. They don't arrest anymore. But this thing is going on in Australia, especially in Melbourne. Our men are being taken into police custody. So we were getting arrested, men and women. I remember the big black paddy wagons would draw up in front of our chanting party. And the women were allowed to escape first. We would run into the store. I remember running through the store, going out the back door of the store, finally getting caught on the back because they'd all placed people ready to get us. Then they took us to jail, and that went on for a long time. Whilst we were in jail, the men were separated from the women, but we could hear each other. So the women would chant Hare Krishna, the men would chant Hare Krishna, then the women would chant, then the men would chant, and that went on for hours. It was great fun. They weren't going to stop us chanting. Anyway, Prabhupada continues, the lawyers want 2,000 for defending. So I advise them, why should you defend? Better go to jail and chant Hare Krishna. So that they are doing. They're not eating. The minister in charge of the jail department, he was perturbed that these people are not eating, and they were allowed to do that. He said, you can cook, but they refused because the same kitchen they're cooking, flesh, and so refused. Then after a few days they were let loose. All right, you go home. So this is going on. For someone who is pure vegetarian, they can't even bear the thought of using the same pot in which meat is being cooked. We're more than vegetarian, we're Krishnarian, that we offer our food first to Krishna before we eat it. And so you cannot cook anything in a pot that's had meat in it and unofferable, and we don't eat anything that hasn't been offered, so devotees fasted. It's very nice to fast, won't do any harm. So Prabhupada continues, so religious persecution is always there. Even the father, what to speak of others, Father Hiranyakashipu, he chastised his son. So don't be afraid. Similar disturbance is to happen everywhere. Therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave us instructions that you should be tolerant. So the story of Hiranyakashipu, Hiranya means gold, Kashipu means comfort. So someone who's attached to wealth and comforts becomes disturbed if his son has no inclination in that direction. So Hiranyakashipu chastised his own son, let alone us becoming chastised by government or authorities. So then in Lord Chaitanya's statement, Trinadapi Sunechena Toror Api Sahishnuna, you have to become tolerant, because there will be so much impediments. Amanina Manadena Kirtanya Sadahari. We must chant, we must always do our business despite all objection. That is our business. So it was a very clever tactic. Don't fight it in court. It will cost a lot of money and you may lose in court. But in the court of public opinion, you're not going to lose, because people have no objection that a religion has to go out and sing the glories of God. In Melbourne, conflict with the city authorities did nothing to hinder the expanding preaching opportunities. 7 new devotees had joined in a matter of weeks. Quote, that new devotees are coming is a sign of our success, Prabhupada had written. Madhavisa's monthly report sent on the 27th of October 1972 was a glowing one. So here are some excerpts from that letter. Here in Australia, your children have been spreading your glories very enthusiastically. This can be seen through the increase of book distribution in Sydney and in Melbourne. In the last month, Back to Godhead magazines and book distribution have more than doubled, and 2 new centers have been opened up. Your disciples have opened Adelaide and Brisbane, 2 major cities in Australia. I have returned from Adelaide, and everyone there is in very high spirits, and we've already had 1 meeting there with the town clerk, and he has guaranteed a full cooperation. The book distribution there has been the biggest in Australia last week, and it promises to get bigger every day. So what our main preaching was chanting and distributing literature. And we would go out every day on the street. Those days the streets were full of people. You could interact with them, jostling, so public areas. We go out here in Utah and there's no one on the street, 2 or 3 people. There in Australia in the 70s, it was wall-to-wall people, shopping, going to restaurants, passing through to work, to the offices, and always walking on the street. Due to the protection of Lord Nrsimha and your guidance, the city councils here in Melbourne have reduced their harassment, and the kirtan parties are now allowed to move freely around the city. I do remember, though, we really didn't have any great musicians. Madhavisa was great, but he wasn't always on the street. I remember we used to go out not great voices, couldn't really play the drum, and we would bang away, and it probably was a little bit unharmonious, but people liked it anyway. And we did that sometimes 8 hours a day, but we kept moving so as not to cause a disturbance in one place. The other day we were called to an appointment with the Archbishop of Melbourne. He is one of the most influential contacts of religion in Melbourne, in Australia. He was very much impressed and sympathetic with our movement and has gone to see the town clerk to speak on our behalf. Madhavisa concluded his letter with a humble request. There are many, many new devotees who are very much anxious to enjoy the divine bliss of your presence. They have been caught up with the spirit of devotional service, and many of these are looking forward to initiation. You have mentioned in your letter that you will be in India until April 1973. But I was very much keen to have you here in Australia in late January or February 1973. If you please give me the go-ahead, I will plan a very organized preaching program in Australasia. I'm very anxiously looking forward to this opportunity, and I will pray you will grant this selfish desire. So Madhavisa is begging Prabhupada to come. It's just, now we're talking the end of October, and he's asking him just to come in 2, 3, 4 months. We've just received your new Bhagavad Gita as it is, and everyone has become enthusiastic to distribute this revolutionary presentation of the Bhagavad Gita. I'm anxious to hear your thoughts on the above-mentioned program. So we always tried hard to bring Prabhupada to Australia. He came several times and was very pleased. So about this time, as preparation for one enormous initiation which took place in the back garden at Glebe. They had a large back garden, half an acre or something, and they set up an enormous fire sacrifice, and lots of devotees were initiated at that time. So Caru, and now I'm going to pass you back to Caru, and he can do some more chanting.
Thanks, Vine. So what do you guys think about a song called Rock on Hanuman? It's from an album by MC Yogi. And Hanuman's the greatest devotee. He personifies bhakti, the yoga of devotion. Let me see if I can get this queued up here. And so I added a couple of other songs along with this, which will underline the fact that Hanuman will do anything for the sake of his eternal Lord and Master Ram. Ram is another name for God. Krishna's name for God means all attractive, all wealth, all fame, all beauty, all strength, all knowledge, all renunciation. And he's known by many names. He has many names in different cultures. Of course, he also incarnates within human society, as he did as Krishna, and many millions of years ago as Lord Sri Ramachandra. And so, along with him came one of his greatest servants from the spiritual world. His name was Hanuman. Hanuman took that incarnation in the body of a monkey and served the Lord selflessly. You'll get a better idea of who Hanuman is and what he did from the lyrics of the following song. Hanuman Ji, son of the wind, lord of the monkeys, Rama's best friend. You eliminate illusion and destroy all sin, and you're known as Shiva's incarnation. Champion of truth with the thunderbolt body, mighty monkey god who embodies bhakti. You're the breath of Shakti, and you achieve victory like the movie Rocky. You carry a club to smash a thug. You're the perfect servant, the face of grace, and your heart is pure. And you make the whole demon race tremble when you roar. In the service of the Lord, you're the mighty monkey warrior, also known as the demon destroyer. Your compassion in action, devotion in motion, with the strength to leap the length of the ocean. Hanumanji, you have the power. Make yourself small as a cat, tall as a tower. You devour lust, ignorance, envy, and greed. You succeed and never cower in the hour of need. You left Lanka to reassure Sita. Don't worry about a thing, because Rama's going to free you. You burned down Lanka when your tail was on fire. And to serve Lord Ram is your only desire. When Ram's little brother was about to die, without a second thought you began to fly, searching for a cure high in the Himalayas. And when you weren't sure which herb to take him, homie, you brought the whole mountain back with one hand. That's why Hanuman is Rama's best friend. You embody Bhakti, the yoga of love, and that's why Ram gave you a great big old hug. You're the mighty monkey warrior of the epic Ramayana, repeating Ram's names, the holy Ram Nam, singing kirtan with the cymbals in your hand, going on and on like a one-man band, singing Jai Ram, Si Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Jai Ram, Si Ram, Jai Jai Ram, rocking on and on until the break of dawn, singing Jai Ram, Si Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Jai Ram, Si Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Here's another song which Hanuman might very well have spoken to Lord Ram. Dear Ram, take my life and let it be consecrated, Lord, to thee. Take my moments and my days, let them flow in ceaseless praise. Take my hands and let them move at the impulse of thy love. Take my feet and let them be swift and beautiful for thee. Take my lips and let them sing, always only for my King. Take my mouth and let it be filled with messages for thee. Take my silver and my gold, not a mite would I withhold. Take my intellect and use every power as thou shalt choose. Take my will and make it thine, it shall be no longer mine. Take my heart, it is thine own, it shall be thy royal throne. Take my love, my Lord, I pour at thy feet its treasure store. Take myself, and I will be ever only all for thee. Jai Ram, Si Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Rocking on and on until the break of dawn, singing Jai Ram, Si Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Rocking on and on until the break of dawn. Long did I toil and found no earthly rest. Far did I roam and found no certain home. Till at last I sought them in Ram's sheltering breast, who opens his arms and bids the weary come. With Ram I found a home, a rest divine, and I since then am Ram's, and Ram is mine. The good I have is from Ram's store supply. The ill is only what Ram deems the best. With Ram as friend I am rich with nothing beside, and poor without Ram, though of all possessed. Changes may come, I take and I resign, content while I am Ram's, and Ram is mine. Changes may come, in Ram no change is seen. Ram's like a glorious sun who wanes not nor declines. Ram walks above the storms and clouds serene, and on his devotees inward darkness shines. Jai Ram, Si Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Rocking on and on until the break of dawn, singing Jai Ram, Si Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Rocking on and on until the break of dawn. While here, alas, I know but half Ram's love, but half discern him and but half adore. But when I meet Ram in the realms above, I hope to love him fully, praise him more, and show and tell amid the kirtans divine how fully I am his and he is mine. While here, alas, I know but half Ram's love, but half discern him and but half adore. When I meet him in the realms of love, I hope to love him fully, praise him more, and show and tell amid the kirtans divine how fully I am his and he is mine. Jai Ram, Si Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Rocking on and on until the break of dawn, singing Jai Ram, Si Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Rocking on and on until the break of dawn. Hanuman Ji, son of the wind, Lord the monkeys, Rama's best friend. You eliminate illusion and destroy all sin, and you're known as Shiva's incarnation. Champion of truth with a thunderbolt body, the mighty monkey god who embodies Bhakti. You're the breath of Shakti, and you achieve victory like the movie Rocky. You carry a club to smash the thugs. You're the perfect servant, face of grace, and your heart is pure. You make the whole demon race tremble when you roar. In the service of the Lord, you're the demon destroyer, also known as the mighty monkey warrior. You're compassion in action, devotion in motion, with the strength to leap the length of the ocean. Hanuman Ji, you have the power, make yourself small as a cat, tall as a tower. You devour lust, ignorance, envy, and greed. You succeed and never cower in the hour of need. You left Lanka to reassure Sita, don't worry about a thing, because Rama's going to free you. You burned down Lanka when your tail was on fire, and to serve Lord Rama is your only desire. When Ram's little brother was about to die, without a second thought, you began to fly, searching for a cure high in the Himalayas. And when you weren't sure which herb to take him, homie, you brought the whole mountain back with one hand. That's why Hanuman, you're Rama's best friend. You embody Bhakti, the yoga of love, and that's why Ram gave you a great big old hug. You're the mighty monkey warrior of the epic Ramayana, repeating Ram's names, the holy Ram Nam, singing kirtan with the cymbals in your hand, going on and on like a one-man band, singing Jai Ram, Sri Ram, Jai Jai Ram, rocking on and on until the break of dawn, singing Jai Ram, Sri Ram, Jai Jai Ram, rocking on and on until the break of dawn. That was from an album by MC Yogi called Rock On Hanuman. Continuing here, after having heard from Bhai Bhavi, it's now my turn to read from this excellent book called The Great Transcendental Adventure by Cormados. Moving on here, we're in November of 1972. The Melbourne press was awash with Krishna throughout November. Quote, 3 Krishna followers fined over a brawl. Krishna 3 fined. Krishna's leaders have case to answer, evidence given on Krishna, and so on and so on and so forth. On December 2nd, 1972, Labour won office to the Australian House of Representatives. Gough Whitlam became Australia's new Prime Minister. Only days after, Whitlam's deputy announced an immediate end of national service call-up. All draft registers were released from jails, and 2 weeks later, the last Australian troops left Vietnam. Several young devotees, poised on the brink of forced enlistment into the Australian Armed Forces, breathed a sigh of relief. Ever since the first bus trip to Brisbane in early 1972, it was obvious that Brisbane would be an ideal spot for a Hare Krishna temple. The weather was warm and pleasant, and local young people showed an active interest in Krishna consciousness. In October 1972, Upendra, prevented from going to Perth because of an emergency hernia operation, decided instead to start a temple in Brisbane. Accompanied by his wife, Chitralekha, they located a typical Queenslander-style house in the inner residential suburb of Milton near the Brisbane River. The small wooden house in Douglas Parade soon hosted a regular Sunday feast program. Upendra conducted chanting parties downtown and distributed Bhakti Godhead magazines. Several young men and women regularly attended the temple programs. Caru arrived in Brisbane in early November with a van load of celibate student brahmacharis. He had just conducted a successful visit to the city of Townsville, North Queensland. After distributing all their stock of small books and magazines, they had returned to Brisbane accompanied by a young local nurse who wished to become a devotee. That was Renate Clark, who became initiated as Nartaki. And she's still a nurse. She works in the Bhaktivedanta Hospital in Mirror Road in Bombay. She has a daughter, one single daughter named Rasmeen. Caru suggested that the Krishna conscious mission in Brisbane could be better served if the quiet suburban center be located to a more central location. That was Caru. That was me. I was always wanting to go where the pedestrian foot traffic was, downtown, where the action was, where you could walk right out the door, start chanting or start distributing books, and we found a good place. He found a shop front in Mary Street. Downtown Brisbane was only 2 blocks from downtown, and the temple moved there. The awning above the door of the new establishment was soon emblazoned with Hare Krishna Temple, all welcome. The large plate glass window allowed passers-by to see the temple clearly from the street. It was not unusual to find clusters of businessmen on their way to work peering through the window, viewing the exotic sights in amusement. There in full swing was the morning kirtan, complete with devotees wearing dhotis, saris, and sporting shiny shaven heads, something strikingly unusual for the conservative Brisbaneites. Madhavisa had thought of inviting Prabhupada to Brisbane during his next visit, and local devotees started collecting their share of Prabhupada's airfare. A donation box was mounted on the temple wall expressly for that purpose. A graph next to the box plotted the steady financial progress. Attracted by the warm, friendly atmosphere of Brisbane Temple, numbers grew. Moving forward a few pages here. Okay, so now we're talking about expanding to Perth, which is a town all the way across the Nullarbor Desert, on the west coast of Australia. 90% of the population lives along the east coast. Then there's this huge desert in the middle of the country, and a modest, medium to small town. Of course, I don't know what it's like today, but in those days it was a small town, medium to small town named Perth. And Buddhimanta and I had gone there previously, just the two of us, to inaugurate book distribution in Perth. We drove all the way across the Null Arbor Desert. We spent a couple of weeks there distributing books with great success, and then we returned home. So we had broken the ice there in Perth, and now looks like a permanent mission is headed that way. As Upendra's ill health prevented his going to Perth, Vagabond, this was our devotee originally from Sweden, and his Australian wife, Padmavati, went there instead. By the end of December 1972, they'd established a small center in West Perth, conducting regular chanting parties. They had book and magazine distribution going and a Sunday feast program. Srila Prabhupada's travel plans were now becoming firm. I believe this is the third visit to Australia. He wrote to Madhavisa on 29 December 1972, confirming that most of February 1973 could be set aside for an Australian tour. Prabhupada would return to Mayapur in West Bengal for the celebration of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance day in early March 1973. This is a quote from Prabhupada's letter to Madhavisa. Now I am so much looking forward to seeing you all, my beloved disciples, then again in the near future, so kindly make all arrangements as you know best. I think you wanted me to stop in Jakarta first, so that is all right. But if there is too much strenuous traveling program, that will not be favorable. Better stop in fewer places and have first-class programs there. But I am simply at your mercy, and I have only the protection of Krishna in all circumstances. Therefore, whatever you make me do, that I am prepared. An Australian devotee about this time went by himself to Indonesia to start the mission there. His name was Guru Mandala Bhumi. And over the years, he has done amazing things. Krishna consciousness is all over Indonesia. Farms, restaurants, temples, hundreds if not thousands of devotees. And that same devotee, who must be in his 70s like me, is still active, heading up the mission there in Indonesia. He had spoken Indonesian, he had learned the language prior to going there, had great success. So all glories to Guru Mandala Bhumi, wherever you are today. Thursday, 5th of February, 1973. So this is Prabhupada, I believe, returning to Australia in February. It was less than 10 months since Prabhupada's last visit to Australia. Despite their very best intentions, however, the devotees were once again not quite ready for Prabhupada's arrival. If you've been following these Krishna Lite shows over the last 16 weeks, you realize that something always goes awry when Prabhupada comes to Australia. There's a miscommunication, the plane is early, whatever, but devotees are hardly ever successful in being there to meet him. He usually arrives at the temple by taxi. Being a transcendentalist, Prabhupada never minded it or got upset. So it says here, the reason for the miscue, the third consecutive time, Prabhupada's flight from Bangkok was scheduled to stop in transit in Sydney. The Sydney devotees had planned to greet him there and then stay with him for the few hours until he boarded his local flight to Melbourne. But there had been a mix-up, and by the time the devotees had arrived to greet him, he had boarded his next flight. The Melbourne devotees' attempt at airport reception was only slightly better. It really wasn't our fault. We weren't the bumblers that you would think. But anyway, a devotee named Franco reminisces, Upananda and I had gone early, at least we thought it was early, to Melbourne's Tullamarine Airport. Upananda went off to telephone the temple to find out where all the rest of the devotees were. Stand lookout at the escalators, he said. I looked up, and suddenly there at the top of the escalators was Srila Prabhupada. He was descending very quickly. I called out to Upananda, and he came running. Standing behind Srila Prabhupada was Ballymartin, carrying what we found out later was Srimati Radharani, dressed up in a cloth. We both offered our obeisances on the spot. Srila Prabhupada appeared grave and concerned. Where are all the devotees, he asked. Upananda, embarrassed by yet another bungled airport reception, answered nervously, Oh, Prabhupada, they're still at the temple. Prabhupada's concerns were practical. Then how should we go there? It was soon decided that a taxi would be in order. Bali Martin and Shrutikirti handed over all the luggage to the two young devotees, and still carrying the carefully wrapped deities, left for the temple with Srila Prabhupada. Upananda, overcome by the events, forgot to telephone ahead. Oh my gosh. So this next segment is entitled 14 Burnett Street, St. Kilda, which was the address of the temple at that time. Page and a half. Since Prabhupada had decided to visit only Melbourne, Sydney, and Auckland this visit, the Melbourne temple was packed to capacity with over 70 devotees from all over Australia. The scene resembled Sydney 1 year before. It was 9 in the morning. Some devotees were still getting dressed for their ill-fated trip to the airport. Others painted banisters, mopped the temple floor, and laid the last piece of red carpet on the stairs. One devotee was applying a final coat of paint to the temple room wall, while two others rushed to hang the temple curtains. The new altar would not be finished until the next day. A black taxi suddenly rolled up outside the temple. A devotee sweeping the patio sounded the alarm. Prabhupada was here. The temple erupted in panic. Devotees, some still half-dressed or in overalls, quickly formed two lines down the narrow temple hallway. Someone started a kirtan. As Srila Prabhupada entered the front gate, many devotees were seeing their spiritual master for the first time. Caru, who is known as Krishna Premi, reminisces, "Before I met Srila Prabhupada, the devotees were always saying, Prabhupada said this, Prabhupada said that. Every second word was Prabhupada. As a very, very new devotee, I was thinking, what if when I finally meet Prabhupada, I'm disappointed? What happens if he doesn't line up to my expectations?" But the moment Srila Prabhupada walked in the front door, just seeing his physical form, I was completely convinced that he was everything that everyone had ever said he was and more. Just by witnessing his incredible presence, his natural spiritual effulgence, and his serenity, I was completely convinced of his great purity. Madhavisa Swami raced ahead and, grabbing a brahmachari's top cloth, mopped up the last drops of water on the temple room floor. Prabhupada followed close behind, entered the temple, and offered his obeisances before the temporary altar set up near the street end of the temple. Srila Prabhupada sat down on the newly upholstered pink and magenta seat. He smiled at the young, bright-faced devotees before him. The young ladies in clean saris and the shaven-headed men in new robes all smiled back. "So," Prabhupada said, "everything is all right?" The devotees responded with a resounding, "Yes, Jai Prabhupada." Krishna Premi, who was Caru, as was their custom, started crying. Prabhupada laughed softly. Krishna Premi always cries. And then Krishna Premi cried even louder. Prabhupada spoke a few words expressing his happiness at the improvements that had taken place since his last visit, then retired to his room. Prabhupada's quarters were, as last year, the transformed brahmachari ashram. Since the temple would be hopelessly cramped, it had been suggested to Prabhupada that perhaps he could be accommodated more comfortably in a hotel. But Prabhupada had declined the offer. Better to stay in the association of devotees, he had said. So instead, most of the young men had been relocated to stay at the downtown Hare Krishna shop, and the ladies were billeted nearby at the home of various householders. So Prabhupada's back in Australia for the third time, for an extended period of time. The first visit was only 4 days. The second visit was a couple of weeks, and this is supposed to be the better part of a month. So we'll read more about that next Sunday when we get together again. Next Sunday, by the way, will be the day 2 days before Krishna Janmashtami. Krishna Janmashtami is the holiest day on our Krishna calendar. It's the appearance day of Lord Krishna, and it falls on August 11th this year. We'll be celebrating mostly in the Salt Lake City temple from 6 o'clock in the evening onwards. And because of the pandemic, we won't have any of the normal activities like a gala dance presentation. We won't have an area where people sit down and eat the feast together. You'll more or less have to kind of single file through the temple, get the darshan of the deities, exit, and then just get a bag of dry prasadam. It's the best we can do to keep safe under the circumstances. So I want to end the show here with our trademark song. As you know, chanting the Hare Krishna is our namesake. That's why we are called the Hare Krishnas, because it's a fundamental principle of ours to chant Hare Krishna. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spoke and wrote 8 verses 500 years ago about the efficacy of chanting the holy names of the Lord in Bengali. So I'm going to sing you my rap version of it, and then finish the show today by giving the original Bengali words that, although you may not understand the meaning, they have incredible potency. So here are the Sikshastakam, 8 verses on the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra as propounded by the founder of the Krishna conscious movement 500 years ago, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chanting the holy names extinguishes the flames, breaks the chains, blesses the heart and the earth at large with moonlight rays, discharging waves of nectar our senses have been craving since ancient days. The holy names put all their blessing to shame. Krishna Govinda chanted anywhere, everywhere. The mercy Shakti is fully there. A divine app to restore your mental software, zap the malware, restart your heart, tap the reservoir of loving care. No hard and fast rules, no lessons, no schools. The bliss of bhakti rare, yet free for the taking. Only declare your heart is aching in divine love awakening. Night and day by constant recitation, chant the great mantra without hesitation. Free from temptation with the sensation of feeling yourself lower than the straw in the street, more talented than the tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige. Humility is the key to enjoy the vibration eternally. Wealth in the millions, beautiful women, the spell of fame. Even liberation, hey, totally lame compared to the champagne. Chanting the holy names. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Govinda, son of Nanda, though you're the one, second to none. My shining sun. I'm heartbroken in this ocean of birth and death. It's not worth the commotion. Pull me out of this cruel blender, surrendered as an atom in the sweet splendor of your tender lotus feet. Lord, when will my eyes pour with tears of love like rain from the skies above? When will my voice choke up, invoking your name? When in transcendence will my bodily hairs stand on end? Though a moment appears like 12 years or more when you're not here, I have only to proclaim your name and I'm smiling again. Even if you restrain me roughly in your embrace or pain me by hiding your face, you remain my Lord unconditionally, no matter what the difficulty, decline or gain, rain or shine. I am yours and you are mine. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So these are the 8 verses in the original Bengali. Cheto Darpanam Arjanam Baba Devagni Nirvapanam Sreya Kayora Vichandikaranam Vidyavadu Jivanam Manandam Budi Vardanam Pati Param Purnamrita Swadanam Sarvat Mashnapanam Param Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtaram Nam Namakari Bahada Nija Sarva Shakti Stata Pita Nimata Shmaranena Karaha Atadishi Tava Kripa Bhagwan Mamapi Dirdaiv Midishami Ajani Nanuragaham Trinara Pisa Nichana Tarora Pisa Ishana Manina Manadana Kirtanya Sarahari Nadanam Najanam Nasandarim Kavitam Vajagadishamai Mama Janmani Janmani Shri Bhavatad Bhakti Haitaki Twai Ainanda Danuja Kinkaram Paditam Mam Vishame Kripaya Tava Para Pankaja Sita Dila Fidishir Bichetayam Nayanam Gadavishaya Padanam Gadgad Vidya Pulaga Nichitam Babukara Tavanam Magani Bhavisati Yugayitam Nimeshana Chaksusa Pravisayitam Sanyayitam Jagat Sarvam Govinda Virahename Aslishava Padaram Panashtumam Adarshanam Armahatam Karotuva Yatatava Biradata Labato Mad Pradanantashtu Shayavanaparaham. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Chanting the holy names cleanses the heart, extinguishes the flames, breaks the chains, blesses the earth at large with moonlight rays, discharging waves of nectar our senses have been craving since ancient days. The holy names put all their blessing to shame. Krishna Govinda chanted anywhere, everywhere. The mercy Shakti is fully there. It's a divine app to restore your mental software, zap the malware, restart your heart, tap the reservoir of loving care. No hard and fast rules, no lessons, no schools. The bliss of bhakti rare, yet free for the taking. Only declare that your heart is aching in divine love awakening. Night and day by constant recitation, chant the great mantra without hesitation. Free from temptation with the sensation of feeling yourself lower than the straw in the street, more tolerant than the tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige. Humility is the key to enjoy the vibration eternally. Wealth in the millions, beautiful women, the spell of fame, worldly acclaim. Even liberation, hey, totally lame compared to the champagne of chanting the holy names. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Govinda, son of Nanda, though you're the one, second to none, my shining sun. I'm heartbroken in the ocean of birth and death. It's not worth the commotion. Pull me out of this cruel blender, surrenders an atom in the sweet splendor of your tender lotus feet. Lord, when my eyes pour with tears of love like rain from the skies above? When my voice choke up invoking your name? When in transcendence my bodily hairs stand on end? Though a moment appears like 12 years or more when you're not here, I've only to proclaim your name and I'm smiling again. Even if I restrain me rough in your embrace or pain me by hiding your face, you remain my Lord unconditional. No matter what the difficulty, decline or gain, rain or shine, I am yours and you are mine. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu quoted the Brihad Naradiya Purana. Harinama, Harinama, Harinami Bhakeva, Kalona Steva, Nasteva, Nasteva, Gatira, Yata. In this current dark age, winter season, quarrel and hypocrisy called Kali Yuga, there's only one truly effective means of becoming becoming God conscious or achieving self-realization. Lord Chaitanya 3 times positively asserts, Harinama, Harinama, Harinama. Chant the holy names, chant the holy names, chant the holy names. And 3 times he negatively claims there's no other alternative, there's no other alternative. Nasteva, 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 Gatir Anyata. Harinama, Harinama, Harinami Vakevalam Karo Nasteva, 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 Gatir Anyata. Inclusion of all scriptures is in this age the prescription for achieving freedom from all sufferings, extracting yourself from the ocean of birth and death, and pulling yourself out of the cruel blender of material life of birth, death, disease, and old age. The infallible method is chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Thanks for being with us for the 16th episode of the Krishna book, and we're well through the book. We're in the midst of Prabhupada's 3rd visit to Australia, which occurred in 1973. Also, bringing us up to contemporary time, we are entering into kind of a festival season. We have the appearance day of Lord Balaram. Tomorrow, there'll be lots of celebrations, recitations about Lord Balaram, the first expansion of Krishna, Shankarshan, Baladev, Aniruddha. Online, look for those. You can do a search. We'll also be celebrating our Salt Lake City temple tomorrow evening from 6 p.m. And then just 8 days later on the 11th of August, which will be Tuesday a week, is the appearance day of Lord Krishna called Janma Astami. On the 8th day after the dark moon, Lord Krishna appeared 5,300 years ago. He said, Yada yada hi dharma sya glanir bhavat abhutanam dharma sya taradmanam sridami. Whenever and wherever there's a decline in religious principle and a rise in irreligiosity, the Lord manifests himself. And the reason he does so is to protect the devotees, to annihilate the miscreants. In this age, we're not going to look for an avatar per se to descend in the midst of all this chaos and confusion and friction, because we already have the Lord in the form of sound vibration. The Lord has appeared in these chaotic times in the form of his holy name. And with the weapon of his holy names, we can banish all the darkness, ignorance, mistrust, suspicion with which we're confronted at the moment. So until we meet again, don't forget to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Rama, Hare Hare.